Hello there, I'm Catherine Nicholson, looking inside the Americas with you on France 24. Coming up in this week's show, where next for Venezuela and how much might international pressure have on the spiralling political and economic crisis? We've been speaking to one expert on the South American oil producer. 50 years ago, they were on opposite sides of race riots. Now they're friends. We're meeting two residents of Newark in the US state of New Jersey as they look back on how far civil rights have come in the last half-century. And it's got smoke-breathing dragons instead of a jukebox and an iron throne instead of bar stools. It is one for the series fans, as we'll be showing you around a special Game of Thrones-inspired pub. First, though, Donald Trump might have promised to focus more on the United States and less on foreign policy, but this week he's weighed in on the political turmoil in Venezuela. His threat to impose unspecified economic actions comes in response to the Venezuelan president's moves to change the constitution. Well, the opposition in Venezuela believes that Nicolás Maduro is trying to tighten his own grip on power. They held an unofficial referendum last weekend and say 7.5 million people voted against the president's plans. So then, what kind of effect might international threats and pressure have? And does Maduro have any international allies left? France 24's Luc Schrago sat down with Venezuela expert Christophe Ventura to find out more.
The referendum was a symbolic victory for the opposition because she has been able to say that 7 million of Venezuelans were supporting a program. For the opposition, the objective was to create a sort of solidarity movement within the media, the international media framework, and to the international governments from the European Union and the US. And from this point of view, it has worked. President Maduro pursued three main objectives with his proposals of a Constituent Assembly. The first one is to put pressure on the opposition in order to make her come back to a political discussion. The second objective, from his point of view, is to remobilize the Chavismo, who is not really mobilized today. And the third objective should be for him to defend elements of the Bolivarian revolution, especially the public services, energy, nationalization of energy, etc. Since 2015, Obama already imposed sanctions on some of Venezuelan officials, and the concrete results are very moderate. But we are probably talking about specific sanctions against officials, and obviously it would complicate their personal life, but it won't change at all the general framework of the Venezuelan situation. President Maduro has strong support in Latin America from Bolivia, from Ecuador, from Cuba, from Nicaragua, for example. Some other countries don't want to take part actively in the internal conflict and are asking for a political situation, a dialogue between the government and the opposition. That's the mainstream position in Latin America. At the international level, President Maduro can count with the support of China and Russia. President Maduro has always said that what he wants is to stay in charge until the end of his mandate. And he announced a date for a presidential election in March 2018. Both opposition and governments have strong support in the country. And so we are in this situation where we are entering in a sort of long conflict.
Now, people searching for proof of Donald Trump's alleged links to Russia and collusion with Moscow have more pause for thought as of this week. It has emerged that the US president met with Vladimir Putin not once, but twice at the recent G20 summit. The second meeting had previously been undisclosed to the public. The White House and National Security Council are downplaying the news as something like a casual after-dinner chat. However, questions are being asked nonetheless about, among other things, why no official record of the conversation was made. Donald Trump himself has brushed off speculation about any potential controversy as fake news. Well, what's definitely not fake news is the failure this week of the US Republican Party to crush Barack Obama's landmark healthcare reforms. Getting rid of what's been nicknamed Obamacare has been a key promise for the GOP. But a proposed alternative to replace it has failed to win enough support among the party's own senators. It is estimated that more than 20 million Americans could have lost all or some of their healthcare rights under that plan within the next decade. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell now says that he will hold a vote next week on simply repealing existing healthcare laws without voting on a replacement. Well, let's take you back in time now to 50 years ago and a night of violence in New Jersey. Our picture of the week this week shows helmeted riot police in Newark dragging a rioter away from the scene of racial disorder on July 14th, 1967. Well, two local residents who back then were on opposing sides of the unrest have since become friends, coming together again half a century on to talk about how they have seen their city progress.
Ebony and Ivory here.
Two major figures of Newark in New Jersey.
Salt and pepper.
Salt and pepper.
Liz and Junius are friends and neighbors, a sign of their city's recent transformation. They lived in opposite worlds in 1967 when deadly riots kicked off here after police beat up an African-American taxi driver. The National Guard was called in, and 5 days of violence left 26 people dead and over 1,000 injured, mostly from the black community.
People felt they were mistreated, humiliated, beaten down, and they felt there was no other way for them to respond.
The city was left in ruins, but unlike most of her white friends at the time, Liz Del Tufo refused to leave. 3 years after the riots, she saw the election of Newark's first African-American mayor. All of his successors have been black, reflecting the new majority of the population. Today, Liz has found hope in her hometown again and proudly shows off its progress, like these new low-income houses.
This answered a crying need for good public housing. The public housing of the 1950s and the deterioration of it was a large cause for the 1967 events.
While some neighborhoods have been transformed, signs of poverty are still visible. Newark struggles with unemployment, drugs, and gun violence. Born and raised here, Anthony Ambrose has seen the police department evolve for the better, with now 78% black and Latino officers. A way to help prevent another wave of riots, like those that shook Ferguson, Missouri in 2014.
The community has to have trust. Faith-based people have to have trust in you. Block watch groups have to have trust in you. You can't, the day of a riot or a conflict, you can't look to start all this. So I think from where we were in 1967 to where we are today, we've made incredible strides.
The next step, economic development and bringing in a new, richer population. Realtors are already on the hunt for millennials priced out of nearby New York. And downtown, Newark is putting on its best face, trying to seduce.
Here's a question for you. Are you one of the many millions of Game of Thrones fans out there? Well, if you are, you might already be mourning the fact that the fantasy epic TV series is now into its penultimate season, meaning the end is soon nigh. Well, as you prepare for the impending finale, you can get your fix of the show another way and a beer into the bargain too. Pierre Del Rio explains.
Winter has come to Washington, D.C., but just for the summer. The brand new Game of Thrones pop-up bar offers a series of immersive rooms inspired by the show's different realms. The North and its iconic weirwood tree, the Red Keep displaying the banners of the different houses of Westeros, or the House of Black and White and the Hall of Faces, recreated with plaster face molds of the bar's employees, friends, and family.
Game of Thrones is a super important show to us. There's so many different spaces and different scenes, and it has a great set that you can sort of mimic as far as design for the bar, and then also mimic in the cocktails.
A cocktail list that stays true to the spirit of the show. The North remembers a Scotch-based drink is served in a horn. The rum-mixed Dothraki comes with a fiery twist. and the Omegang Brewery's Bend the Knee, the official Game of Thrones beer, is available on tap. Those with a thirst for power, however, can take turns on the Iron Throne, the royal seat in Westeros.
The Game of Thrones Iron Throne is the best. The jacket, yeah, I felt legit.
The bar will close early on Sundays, so patrons and staff can watch the latest episode live. Other than that, it will remain open until the end of Season 7 on August 27th.
Well, if you prefer a little physical exercise and spiritual self-improvement to binge-watching Game of Thrones, well, here's an unusual option that you might want to consider. This is goat yoga, and I think you'll find the name is pretty self-explanatory. It's a growing trend in the United States. Fans of unusual pursuits performing downward dogs, tree posers, and the rest surrounded by goats on farms from Oregon to Arizona to Massachusetts. As you can see, it all looks like good, clean fun for all involved, if perhaps a little bit challenging for the concentration. We will leave you with these pictures for this week's Inside the Americas and see you again next week for another edition here on France 24.
We are journalists, and normally you have to listen to us, but you have things to tell us too. Maybe you've experienced a dramatic event, or you've got something important to say. You want to make a difference. That is why we created The Observers. Now, the first step is very easy. You get in touch with our team. Send us your images, tell us what you've seen. And then it's our job to get your voice out there, on our site, on social networks, on your mobiles and tablets, and on TV, of course. You can appear in our weekly show via webcam. Or perhaps we'll come see you in person, where you live, in your country, your town, and we'll work together on a report for our investigative show, The Observers Direct. So you get the idea. This show is your show, your way to get your voice out to the world.